This video has some frank talk about suicide and depression. It does not glamorize it, but merely offers the perspective of a survivor of suicide. I am not a therapist, and my area of expertise comes only from my own experience. Welcome to the dojo. First of all, if you're here because you are suicidal, I feel your pain. You have an ally here that doesn't judge you or feel you're a coward. If you want to hear about my own experience of suicide, there is another video above that you can click on to hear the details. If you're here because you are in deep depression and trying to sort through what you're feeling, I'm here to give you a breakdown of the two phases of depression that I encountered during my period fighting severe depression. The first phase of depression is essentially what I call chemical. Now, that's not really the word I'd like to use, but essentially what I'm trying to say is that your depression has to do with an imbalance within your body that is making you feel depressed, even if there isn't an external reason for feeling this low. These types of depressions could include persistent depressive disorder, once known as dysthymia, bipolar, psychotic depression, postpartum depression, and seasonal affective disorder, or what is called winter depression. These types of depression can have many different sources, including diet and hormonal balances, but they all share an outward force as the main fuel for their intensity. The second phase of depression is what I call situational. This is the one I have the most experience with and often is associated with major depressive disorder. This is a depression that lasts more than 2 weeks, and symptoms include fatigue, loss of sleep, suicidal thoughts, weight loss, lack of interest in previously enjoyable things. This is the most common form of depression, and treatments can include therapy and/or medicinal courses of action. This kind of depression is not always, but often in direct reaction to a traumatic event in your life. Perhaps it's the loss of a loved one, or the loss of a love. Perhaps you've lost your job, or the company you started just failed. This kind of depression, if it can be named, can be treated in ways that are not physically invasive, and even without, in some cases, the need for seeing a professional therapist. That's what happened to me. You see, situational depression comes with one major silver lining. Situations change, and wounds heal. You aren't dealing with a dark chemical force beyond your control. You are actually dealing with a dark force within yourself that needs to be confronted, and if done so honestly, can actually turn what you're feeling into a deeper sense of gratitude, an appreciation of being alive, and an empathetic heart that will derive joy from helping others overcome their situational demons. This is where my area of experience comes in. Back in my 20s, I had a majorly traumatic event happen in my life where I essentially felt like I lost everything. To make matters worse, I believed that God itself was out to get me. It sent me into a very dark place. It sent me literally to a ledge to end my life. But we're not here to talk about ending life. We're here to talk about saving it. During that time, I had a spiritual mentor who explained to me that what I was feeling was in reaction to a traumatic event, that with time and proper perspective would eventually be revealed to not be as traumatic as I thought it was. And he was right. If you are to a level of feeling suicidal, ask yourself why. If you don't have something you can instantly put your finger on, you need to reach out for help because it's likely that powers beyond your control are at work, and with proper treatment, your entire perspective can change. But if you can put your finger on the cause of your depression, give yourself a little pat on the back. Naming the source of your depression is the first step towards resolving it. In fact, samurai in ancient Japan used to thank profusely whomever could point out a flaw in their technique that they didn't know about, because once they knew it was there, they believed they could not only fix it, but turn it into a strength. In my case, I was able to pin my depression on a conflict with a person that had led to what I thought were circumstances I could never overcome. The realization that if I ended my life, I was essentially allowing that other person to have the power to take my life, I decided to pause and decide if I wanted to give them that much power over the course of my life. In the end, I decided against it, and let me give you a few pointers on what worked for me, and you can decide if any of them resonate for you. My first step was stepping back, putting life on probation. Frankly, I spent 6 months not totally convinced that I wanted to live. I was just giving life a chance to talk me into it. You may think it a bit insane, but I actually subjected myself to a remote working environment for those 6 months where I often worked 12 to 14 hours and spent my off hours alone in a small bunkhouse. You wouldn't think that when you're in hell that to subject yourself to even more hell is a good idea, but it did work for me. I spent those months in deep introspection, writing, hiking, asking bold questions of myself. When I emerged from that remote working location, I also emerged from my suicidal depression. I was no longer going to kill myself, but I still had work to do. Hell, I still have work to do to this day, but let me wrap up this video with just a few avenues that worked for me that may work for you. First, at very least find a mentor, if not seek professional help. I was lucky that my mentor was someone who had overcome similar circumstances and essentially served as a therapist, but didn't send me a bill. Second, don't be afraid of solitude. Now, too much can certainly be a bad thing, but finding room to learn to ask yourself the hard questions without fear of embarrassment, and to even eventually learn to very much enjoy your own company, was a game changer for me. Third, get outside. In a strange way, my depression led me to become a nature addict. 30 years after the event, I'm still the guy who crawls off into the woods alone for hours at a time. Nature is my happy place. And finally, make a plan. It could be starting a YouTube channel, it could be saving for a trip to Greece. Do something that becomes your mission in life and gets you out of bed in the morning. If you can give yourself time to let this wound heal and these circumstances inevitably change, and believe me, change is the only constant in the universe, you will turn this thing around. You will find a reason to be. And if you're like me, you will even find that you are grateful for having had the experience. Sounds far-fetched, right? Well, check out my video on the philosophy of amor fati and find out how you too can come to love your fate. If you're still feeling like you want to end your life, please give yourself a Hail Mary and just reach out for help. I am a survivor of suicide, but not a professional. What I have to say may very well be helpful, but sharing with someone who is trained to help you get a handle on where your depression is coming from and how it can be treated will save your life. There's a philosophy that I think is the most powerful tool for bringing an end to personal darkness. You can hear my take on it by clicking on the link in front of you.